The quiet shift that changed everything. It was a cloudy Tuesday morning in a small town tucked between two forgotten highways. The kind of town where nothing big ever happened, where people whispered more than they spoke, and where a smile from a stranger meant something. Maria had worked the breakfast shift at Penny's Diner for 2 years. She was 22, barely 5 feet tall with tired eyes and hands that never stopped moving. Her mother was sick back home, and Maria worked double shifts to send money every week. Her dreams were small now: pay the rent, keep the lights on, and maybe one day save enough to finish nursing school. That morning started like any other. The smell of burnt coffee lingered in the air. Eggs sizzled on the grill. Regulars shuffled in with sleepy faces and quiet nods. Maria wore her faded pink apron and practiced her usual kindness, the kind that went unnoticed most days. But at exactly 8:03 a.m., the door creaked open, and in stepped a man Maria didn't recognize right away. He wore a beanie low over his forehead, sunglasses that covered half his face, and a thick flannel shirt rolled up at the sleeves. He moved like someone who didn't want attention, and yet something about him made people turn. He chose the corner booth. Maria approached with her notepad, unsure why her heart was beating faster than usual. "Morning," she said. "Coffee?" He nodded. "Black, please." His voice was calm, low, and polite. Nothing loud, nothing strange, just a normal customer. But the moment he spoke, Maria froze. Not because of what he said, but because she suddenly realized who he was. Keanu Reeves. First she thought she must be wrong. Why would someone like him be in their town, in this diner, dressed like this? But then he smiled gently, and there it was, the unmistakable kindness in his eyes. It was him. Maria's hand trembled slightly as she poured the coffee. She tried not to stare. She didn't want to be rude. She didn't want to act like everyone else who treated him like a thing instead of a person. "Thank you," he said softly, placing a small notebook on the table. He seemed deep in thought, scribbling something with a black pen. Maria stepped away, breathing unevenly. She went to the counter where her friend Jake was stacking plates. "Jake," she whispered. "That's Keanu Reeves." Jake chuckled. "Sure it is, and I'm the Queen of England. I'm serious. Look at him." Jake glanced over. His smile faded. No way. But Maria didn't have time to gawk. More customers were coming in. She got back to work, keeping her head down, checking on Keanu's table now and then. He didn't talk much. He ate slowly. He tipped well. And most of all, he didn't act famous. But around 9:15, something unexpected happened. A group of loud businessmen entered the diner. 5 of them, dressed in suits too expensive for a town like this. They sat at the booth behind Keanu's, speaking loudly, laughing in harsh bursts. They slammed their hands on the table, cracked jokes that made the older customers frown, and didn't seem to care who was listening. Keanu didn't say a word. But Maria could see it in his posture, his body stiffening, his pen stopping mid-word. The men behind him were talking about something that clearly bothered him. Politics, Hollywood, actors who were just spoiled crybabies. Maria heard one of them say, "And don't even get me started on that Reeves guy. Guy made one good movie in the 90s and suddenly he's a saint?" Her heart dropped. She glanced at Keanu. He didn't flinch. He didn't react. He kept his head down and listened in silence. Maria felt her stomach twist. The worst part was they didn't know. They didn't realize they were talking about him. They had no idea who was sitting just a few feet away. Maria walked over to their table and asked if they were ready to order. "Give us a few more minutes, sweetheart," one of the men said, without looking at her. She returned to the counter, her fists clenched. She wanted to scream. But then something even worse happened. The men got louder. One of them started swearing, mocking actors with cruel impressions. Their laughter echoed through the diner, drowning out everything else. Keanu finally looked up. His eyes scanned the room. Not in anger, but with quiet disappointment. Maria couldn't take it anymore. She walked over to his table and whispered, "Sir, I'm so sorry, but could you lower your voice a little?" Keanu blinked. Surprised, Maria's cheeks turned red. She realized how it sounded. The loud ones were behind him, and she had just asked him to be quiet. He looked at her for a long moment, then glanced over his shoulder at the men, and then he smiled. "Of course," he said gently. "Thank you for letting me know." Maria nodded awkwardly and turned away. But Keanu Reeves didn't stay quiet. He stood up. Slowly, deliberately. He turned toward the group of men, walked to their table and spoke calmly, barely above a whisper. "Excuse me, gentlemen." They all looked up, annoyed. Keanu took off his sunglasses. The silence was instant. They froze, their mouths half open. One of them whispered, "Is that—" Keanu nodded slightly. "I didn't mean to interrupt," he said. "But I heard what you said earlier. And I think it's important to remember that actors, like everyone else, are just people." His voice wasn't angry. It was soft, respectful. Some of us have lost family. Some of us have struggled with depression. Some of us are just trying to make others smile. And if that makes us weak in your eyes, that's okay. But maybe next time, speak a little quieter. There might be someone nearby who's listening. The entire diner went still. Not a sound, not a breath. The men nodded, ashamed. One of them mumbled an apology. Keanu walked back to his table, sat down, and continued writing in his notebook as if nothing had happened. Maria stood frozen, her heart racing. She had never seen anything like it. Not yelling, not shaming. Just truth, spoken with dignity. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. Keanu left a $100 tip. He waved goodbye with a small smile. Later that day, one of the customers who had filmed the moment uploaded it to the internet. Within hours, the video went viral. Keanu Reeves silences a table of rude businessmen with grace. It was everywhere. But for Maria, what mattered most wasn't the fame or the headlines. It was the way he looked at her when she made that awkward request. He hadn't been offended. He hadn't laughed. He had understood. And in doing so, he taught her something she'd never forget. Sometimes, strength is quiet. Sometimes the softest voice carries the loudest truth. Whispers that travel far. Maria woke up the next morning to her phone buzzing nonstop. Texts, missed calls, and a dozen unread messages. She blinked against the sunlight pouring through her cracked window, grabbed her phone, and squinted at the screen. Her best friend Rosa had texted first. "Girl, you're all over the internet." Maria sat up straight. "What?" She opened the video, link Rosa had sent. It was grainy diner footage taken from the corner near the coffee station. It showed her awkwardly asking Keanu Reeves to lower his voice, and then showed what really happened after that. His calm words to the rude men, the stunned silence. The moment that had felt so small now played like a movie. The caption read, "Young waitress tries to quiet Keanu Reeves. His powerful response. Shuts down rude men. Over 3 million views." Maria covered her mouth. Her heart thudded in her chest. She couldn't believe it. The comments were pouring in. "This is why I love Keanu. The waitress was just trying to do her job. Respect. He handled it like a true gentleman, not a single ounce of ego." But something deeper stirred inside Maria. It wasn't the fame or the attention. It was the fact that someone, somewhere, had taken a small moment and turned it into a lesson. The world wasn't watching a movie star. They were watching a man remind others how to treat people. Her shift at the diner started at noon. She walked in wearing the same apron, the same soft ponytail, but everything felt different. Heads turned when she entered. Mitch, the owner of the diner, waved her over. "You're famous now," he grinned. "I didn't do anything," she said, still dazed. "Sometimes doing the right thing feels like nothing at first," he said, "but the world notices." By 1 p.m., a small news crew showed up outside. They asked to interview her. Maria hesitated. She didn't like cameras. She preferred being behind the scenes unnoticed. But then she remembered her mother, lying in bed back home, always telling her, kindness is never wasted, even if no one sees it. Maybe now, the world had seen it. So she agreed. The interview was simple. The reporter asked her what happened. Maria explained the moment without drama. She praised Keanu, saying how respectful he had been, how calmly he had handled the situation. "I didn't even realize how powerful it was until after," she said. "He didn't make it about him. He made it about kindness, about listening. That meant more than any movie." The interview aired that evening. By the next day, more attention followed. Maria's face was on news sites, blogs, social media. Some people called her the quiet courage girl. Others shared the clip with captions like how to handle bullies with dignity. But not everyone liked it. By Thursday, Maria started receiving strange messages. Some people accused her of doing it for fame. Others said she embarrassed the men on purpose. One message read, "You staged that for clout. You'll fade like the rest." Maria felt sick reading it. She hadn't asked for any of this. She had just done her job. And suddenly, the world that had lifted her up started to pull her down. That night, Maria sat alone on the diner rooftop, legs swinging over the ledge looking at the stars. She thought of her mother. She thought of her tired hands. And she thought of the way Keanu had looked at her. Not like a celebrity, not like someone annoyed, but like someone who saw her. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an unknown number. A message popped up. "Hey Maria, it's Keanu. I hope it's okay that I reached out. Someone from the diner gave me your number. I wanted to say thank you for everything." She froze. For a moment she thought it had to be fake. But then another message followed. "You reminded me what respect looks like. And that matters more than anything." Her hands trembled. "Thank you." She replied, unsure what else to say. The response came fast. "Would you like to talk sometime? I think the world needs more people like you telling their story. And maybe I can help." Maria stared at the screen. Help? Her first instinct was to say no. She didn't want to become a viral trend. She didn't want to be someone's project. But deep down, she knew something had changed inside her. Maybe she had a voice after all. Maybe this was her moment to use it. "Okay," she typed. "I'd like that." A few days later, they met again. This time, not in a diner. It was a small bookstore cafe 2 towns over, quiet and filled with the smell of old paper and espresso. Keanu sat at a corner table wearing a soft black hoodie. No, sunglasses this time. Maria sat across from him, nervous but steady. "You really meant it?" she asked. "You think I should share more?" Keanu nodded slowly. "You're the kind of person people listen to without even knowing it. Not because you shout, but because you care." She looked down, her hands resting on the warm coffee cup. "But what if I mess it up? What if people think I'm just chasing attention?" "Then let them," he said gently. "But the people who matter, they'll know the truth, and they'll be better for it." They talked for hours that day, about kindness, about silence, about how the world needs more of both. Keanu told her about moments in his life when he had stayed quiet too long, and moments when he had spoken up too late. "I've made mistakes," he said. "But I've learned something. People don't remember what you said. They remember how you made them feel." Maria nodded. "That's what you did," he added. "You didn't silence me. You gave me a chance to speak louder. By choosing kindness." She left the cafe with something new in her heart. Not fame, not pride, but purpose. A week later, Maria received an invitation. A local university was hosting a panel on humility in public life. They had seen the video, they had heard her story, and they wanted her to speak, not just as the girl from the diner, but as Maria, the woman who reminded the world what grace looks like under pressure. She said yes, and Keanu promised to be there. The night of the panel, Maria stood on stage under soft lights, her voice steady, her heart pounding. The audience was silent. But they listened, and as she spoke, she saw a familiar face in the front row, nodding with quiet pride. Keanu Reeves. The man who had spoken without shouting. The man who had shown her that dignity was louder than rage. and the man who now sat with the rest of the world, watching her light shine. The voice within the room fell quiet after Maria spoke. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then slowly, applause filled the auditorium. Gentle at first, then building into something full and powerful. It wasn't loud like a concert or explosive like a protest. It was a wave of respect, the kind that rose from the heart. Maria stood frozen behind the podium, her hand still gripping the edge. She wasn't used to this. Not the lights, not the eyes, not the weight of her own words echoing in a hall full of strangers. But in that moment, she didn't feel afraid. She saw her truth reflected in their faces. And at the center, near the front row, Keanu sat quietly, his eyes soft and kind. He didn't clap harder than anyone else. He didn't stand up, but the way he looked at her said everything. You did it. You spoke your truth. You showed them. After the event, people came up to shake her hand. Students, teachers, even the janitor, who had stayed to listen. You reminded me of my daughter, one elderly woman whispered. She was quiet too, but she changed my life. Maria thanked them all, still a little dazed. Keanu approached her last, waiting patiently as the crowd faded. You were honest, he said. That's rare. I was scared, Maria admitted. That's how you know it mattered. They sat in the empty auditorium afterward, just the two of them. The lights dimmed to a soft glow. Maria looked at her hands. They didn't shake like they used to. When you stood up to those men, she said slowly, you didn't raise your voice. You didn't fight. You just reminded them. I wasn't always like that, Keanu said quietly. There were times when I stayed silent when I should have spoken, and times I shouted when I should have listened. So how do you know which is which? He smiled. You don't. Not always, but you learn. And you try again. Over the next few weeks, Maria's life changed in ways she never expected. Her small diner job became part-time, not because she left, but because more people started asking her to speak, to share, to remind others that quiet strength exists in every room. Keanu helped her navigate it, not like a manager or a coach, but like a friend who had walked a difficult path before and didn't want her to trip in the same spots. He connected her with people, mentors, writers, organizers. He never pushed, never took credit. He simply opened doors and stepped aside. One day, they were sitting in the same bookstore cafe, sipping tea, when Maria said something that had been on her mind for days. You think this is just a phase? That people will forget and move on? Keanu looked at her serious. Maria, people forget headlines, they forget names, but they don't forget stories, and yours is just beginning. Maria nodded, though doubt still lingered in her heart. Not everyone was happy with her rise. One evening, she received an anonymous message. You're just a waitress. Stop pretending you're someone special. The words hit hard, harder than she expected. She told Keanu about it the next day. They were walking through a quiet park, leaves crunching under their shoes. He listened, then paused under a tree. Do you remember what you said to me that first day? He asked. I asked you to lower your voice. Exactly. And you did it with respect. Not because you wanted attention, but because you were protecting peace. He turned toward her. If someone's trying to steal your peace now, that's not your burden to carry, that's theirs. She exhaled slowly. I'm trying, but it's hard. So is anything worth doing? She smiled weakly. You sound like a movie script, he laughed. Probably stole it from somewhere. They sat on a bench, quiet for a moment. You know, Keanu added, when you spoke at that panel, I remembered something. My sister used to speak like that, with heart, not force. What happened to her? Maria asked gently. Keanu looked away, his expression distant. She passed away a few years ago. Leukemia. Maria's breath caught in her throat. I'm so sorry. Thank you. I don't talk about it often, but when I saw you up there, it reminded me of her. She believed in kindness, in second chances, in speaking truth softly but with power. Maria reached out and touched his hand. I'm honored you see that in me. He looked back at her. You gave me something that day in the diner, not just a cup of coffee. Not just silence. You reminded me why I care, why I try, and I think you've got more to give the world than you realize. The world kept watching. Keanu's quiet act of grace had started something. Maria's voice had carried it further. By month's end, a national talk show invited both of them. Maria panicked at first. I can't go on TV, she said. What if I freeze? What if I mess up? Keanu placed a hand on her shoulder. Then you'll be human. And that's okay, she agreed. The interview aired a week later. Maria wore a simple dress her mother had mailed her along with a handwritten note. You were always meant for more than this town. But never forget where you came from. On the show, Maria told her story, the rude men, the quiet voice. The day everything changed. Keanu sat beside her and said nothing until asked. When he did speak, it was short and meaningful. She reminded me that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. And the world listens anyway. The clip of that moment went viral again. But this time, people didn't focus on Keanu. They focused on Maria. A foundation reached out to her. They wanted her to speak in schools about empathy and resilience. A publishing house offered to help her write a book, and her old diner, they named a booth after her. The Maria booth. The plaque read, a reminder that kindness is always welcome here. Maria returned to the diner one afternoon and sat in that booth. She looked out the window. The clouds rolled gently across the sky. Her phone buzzed. A message from Keanu. Just watched your TV interview, again. You're growing wings, Maria. She smiled. You helped me find them. When quiet voices echo the loudest, 2 months had passed since Maria's life changed forever. But even now, as she sat on her bed staring at the soft lamplight spilling across her journal, she sometimes wondered if any of it had really happened. It all still felt like a dream, like a movie someone else lived. But it was real. The TV interviews, the thousands of messages, the handwritten letters from strangers, the visits to high schools where she told students about the day she found her, voice by accident, and how kindness doesn't need a microphone to be powerful. But most of all, it was the conversations with Keanu that stayed with her. He had become her mentor, her confidant, her friend. They didn't talk every day, but when they did, it mattered. And when he invited her to attend a private event in Los Angeles, a small evening gathering called Quiet Hearts, where speakers from all walks of life shared moments of courage, they both knew it wasn't just another opportunity. It was a turning point. The event was held in a simple hall tucked behind a garden in the Hollywood Hills. No red carpet, no flashing cameras, just rows of folding chairs, a wooden stage, and warm string lights hanging from the ceiling like stars. Maria wore a plain navy dress. No makeup, just lip balm and a little confidence. Keanu met her outside, dressed in black as usual, his hair a little longer, his eyes the same, gentle, knowing. Ready? He asked. She nodded. I think so. You don't have to be perfect, he said. You just have to be honest. They entered together. The room was filled with quiet energy. People from different places, with different pasts, who had all learned how to carry pain with grace. Maria listened as a war veteran spoke about forgiveness. A teacher spoke about losing a child and learning to teach again. A teenage girl shared how she found strength after being bullied in her school bathroom every day for a year. Then it was Maria's turn. Her heart raced. Her knees felt weak. But as she stepped onto the small wooden stage, she saw Keanu in the front row. His hands folded, eyes locked on hers. Not like a fan, not like a star, but like a friend who believed in her more than she believed in herself. Maria took a deep breath, and then she began. I never planned on being heard, she said. I was just a waitress in a quiet town. I didn't think my voice mattered. She told them everything. The diner, the rude men, how she had asked Keanu to lower his voice, not realizing the noise wasn't coming from him. How he stood, not to fight, but to remind others that respect didn't require volume, and how that one moment changed everything. I used to think kindness was something small, she continued, but now I know it's the biggest thing we have. Her voice didn't shake. It carried, because it was real. When she stepped down from the stage, the audience rose to their feet, not in wild applause, but in quiet shared understanding. Keanu stood last. He hugged her gently and whispered, "You moved them." "I didn't think I could," she said. "You didn't move them with force. You moved them with truth." That's rare. The days after the event were filled with unexpected calls. A national radio station invited her to co-host a segment on empathy. A college requested her to speak at their graduation ceremony. A magazine wanted to feature her on the cover of a special issue about modern heroes. Maria turned some down. She didn't want to lose herself in the noise. She told Keanu, "I'm scared of becoming someone I'm not." He replied, "Then don't. Stay who you are. The world came to you because of your honesty, not your image." One rainy afternoon, Maria visited her childhood home. Her mother had gotten better. The treatments had worked. She was stronger now, walking slowly around the small garden behind the house. Her voice had returned. Softer than before, but full of love. They sat together on the porch as the rain tapped gently on the roof. "I saw you on TV," her mother said, smiling. "Your voice was so calm, so sure." "I learned from you," Maria said. Her mother chuckled. "I used to scold you for being too quiet, but maybe that quietness was waiting for the right moment." They sat in silence. No phones, no cameras, just a mother and daughter, and the peace that follows storms. Not everything was smooth. One evening, after Maria gave a speech at a fundraiser, a man in the crowd shouted, "You got lucky. None of this is real. You're just another face riding a wave." It stung. Maria paused. She could have argued. She could have walked away. But she remembered Keanu's voice in her mind. "Speak softly. Speak true." She walked up to the man after the event. "I understand. If you don't believe in my story," she said, "but the pain I've lived is real. The things I've learned are real. And if my words helped even one person tonight, then that's enough for me." The man didn't reply, but something in his face changed. Maybe he didn't believe her. But he respected her, and that was enough. Keanu called her the next day. "I heard about the incident. You handled it better than I would have." "You would have handled it better than me," she joked. "No," he said. "You reminded me again that power doesn't need a stage, it just needs truth." They paused. Then Keanu said something he hadn't before. "I've been offered a film. It's based on your story." Maria's breath caught. "Mine? Well, not just yours. It's about moments. Moments like the one in the diner, the little choices that ripple outward. And they want you to play yourself?" He smiled. "No. I said if we do it, it should be about you, your journey, and your voice. You should help tell it." Maria didn't know what to say. It was too big, too fast, too unbelievable. But then she remembered something. The day she asked him to lower his voice, he had listened. The day she shared her truth, he had watched. Now it was her turn. "I don't want to be famous," she said softly. "Then don't be, just be you." "Okay," she whispered, "let's do it." That night, Maria opened her old notebook, the one she used to keep beside her bed. She wrote 4 words at the top of a fresh page. "Quiet voices change everything." And as she looked out her window, rain tapping gently on the glass again, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not fear, not doubt, but clarity, a calm kind of strength. And deep inside, she knew. This was only the beginning. A storm before the sunrise, the next few weeks, blurred into one long, unexpected journey for Maria. Each day brought something new: a meeting with a producer, a phone call from an editor, an invite to a documentary series. And through it all, Keanu stayed close. Not as a shadow, Not as a spotlight, but as a friend who knew when to speak and when to stay silent. But even as her story grew brighter, the shadows crept in. It started with a leaked article, a blog post, written by someone claiming to be from her hometown, accused Maria of lying. It said she had exaggerated the incident at the diner, that the businessmen had apologized before Keanu ever spoke, that she had used a celebrity to climb out of a small life. At first, Maria ignored it, but more posts followed, then videos, then angry voices. Suddenly, the kindness that had once lifted her was being twisted. You're fake. You're riding Keanu's fame. You didn't earn any of this. Maria didn't cry. Not at first. She went about her day. She gave speeches. She signed books. She shook hands and smiled. But at night, alone, the words echoed louder than applause. And when her mother called, her voice soft with worry, Maria finally broke. Why are they doing this? She whispered into the phone. Because the world doesn't always understand quiet strength, her mother said. But that doesn't mean it isn't real. Maria closed her eyes. What if they're right? What if I'm just pretending? Her mother paused. Then let me remind you who you are. And she did. She reminded Maria of the time she stayed by her hospital bed for nights without sleep, the time she helped her little brother learn to read when no one else had patience, the time she stood between a scared dog and a drunk man on the street. You didn't need a camera then, her mother said. You didn't need an audience. You were strong before the world noticed. Maria hung up and sat still. The kind of still that feels like waiting for a storm to pass. Keanu called the next day. He had seen the articles. I know how this feels, he said. I've been called things too. Selfish, fake, broken, but that noise doesn't define you. What if it never stops? Maria asked. Then we keep walking anyway, he said. He told her something he hadn't shared before. After my sister died, he said, I went silent. For a long time, the world thought I disappeared. But really, I was just healing. And when I came back, I realized something. People will talk, always. But what you do, that's what stays. Maria listened. Do you think I should quit? No, he said. I think you should write. Write? Your truth, all of it. Not for them, for you. So she did. She turned off her phone. She canceled 3 interviews, and she sat at her kitchen table for 3 days straight. Writing. About the diner. About her fears. About her mother. About how asking someone to lower their voice became the loudest moment of her life, and she didn't hold back. She wrote about the hate too. About the nights she felt like vanishing. About the shame of being seen, and the strange, lonely pressure of being called inspiring when all she wanted was to breathe. Then, without thinking, she emailed it to Keanu. He read it within hours. His reply was one line. This is the most powerful thing you've ever done. He forwarded it to his agent. The agent sent it to a publisher. Within a week, Maria had a book deal. Not a ghost-written biography. Not a sugar-coated version. Her words. Raw. Real. The publisher didn't ask for edits. They said, we don't want to polish the truth. The backlash faded. As fast as it came, it moved on to someone else. The internet needed new noise. But Maria didn't wait for silence. She filled the quiet with her voice. At the official book launch, Maria stood in a bookstore in New York City, surrounded by faces she'd never seen and yet felt somehow connected to. Each person held a copy of her book titled The Table by. The window on the cover was a painting, an empty diner booth, soft morning light pouring in, a notebook left behind on the table. Keanu attended, of course. He wore a gray sweater, his beard a little thicker, his smile the same. You did it, he said as he hugged her. I didn't think anyone would read it, Maria whispered. They didn't need to. They needed to feel it. And they will. She spoke to the crowd, not from a podium, just standing among them. I didn't grow up thinking I'd ever be heard, she said. I was small, quiet. I thought those things meant I didn't matter. But I've learned something. that every time you tell the truth gently, the world leans in. Afterward, one by one, people came to her. A man who had lost his sister, a young woman trying to escape an abusive home, a teenage boy who had never spoken in class until last week, when his teacher showed the diner video. They all said the same thing in different ways. You helped me find something inside me. Maria realized then, this was never about fame, or even about the diner. It was about connection, about holding space for others to breathe. That night, as she walked through the quiet city streets with Keanu, she asked him, "Do you ever wish none of this happened?" He looked at her thoughtfully. "Sometimes," he said, "but then I remember what it gave me." "What did it give you?" He smiled. "You." Maria felt tears press behind her eyes, not because of the words, but because of how softly they were said. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For believing in a waitress with shaking hands." Keanu looked at her. "No. Thank you for asking me to lower my voice." The loudest silence. It was a chilly morning in November when Maria returned to the diner for the first time in months. The air smelled like cinnamon and coffee, just like it always had. Nothing had changed. The faded booth seats, the greasy menu boards, the chipped mugs. And yet, everything felt different. Maria stepped through the doorway slowly. The bell above, the door jingled softly. Jake was behind the counter, stacking plates just like the day this all began. He looked up, grinned wide, and opened his arms. "Look what the wind blew in." Maria laughed and hugged him. "I missed this place." "We missed you more," he said. "Even named a milkshake after you. The Maria. Vanilla with cinnamon. And a shot of courage." She smiled. "That sounds awful." "Tastes worse," he joked. "But people love it." As she walked through the diner, familiar faces looked up. Some waved, some nodded. None treated her like a celebrity, and that was exactly what she wanted. At the corner booth, the one she had served so many times, she sat down quietly. The same table, the same seat. Only now, her hands weren't shaking, and her voice wasn't afraid. Mitch, the owner, brought her a cup of black coffee. "On the house," he said. She took a sip and looked out the window. The sun was rising slowly, its golden light spilling across the street. And then the door opened again. He walked in just like he had that first day. Beanie, low, simple clothes. Calm steps. Keanu Reeves. Maria didn't move. He smiled when he saw her, then sat across from her without a word. For a while they just sat there. No cameras, no crowd. Just two people in the quiet. "It's strange," Maria said. "Finally. I used to dream of escaping this town. Now it feels like the only place I ever understood myself. Because this is where it started," Keanu said. "This booth, this coffee, this moment." She nodded. "Did you know?" he added. "I came back here once after everything went viral. I sat in this booth, just to remember." "Remember?" "What?" How one quiet voice guy changed everything. Maria felt her throat tighten. "Sometimes I still wonder," she said. "Why me? Why that day?" Keanu looked at her gently. "Because truth always finds a way. And that day, it found yours." They spent the rest of the morning catching up. Keanu told her about the new foundation he was starting, the quiet kind. A project focused on supporting everyday people doing extraordinary things in silence. Janitors, bus drivers, nurses, waitresses. He wanted Maria to lead it. She hesitated. "Me? You're already doing it," he said. "This just gives it a name." She agreed, but only if they made one promise. Never forget where it started. They sealed it with a toast of diner coffee. The foundation launched a few weeks later. The quiet, kind became a movement. Instead of big galas and loud campaigns, it focused on small stories. A boy helping his teacher after class. A grandmother teaching reading at the library. A firefighter who bought groceries for a struggling family without ever leaving his name. Maria helped tell their stories. Keanu helped fund them. They traveled together, not as stars or speakers, but as witnesses. And everywhere they went, They reminded people that strength doesn't need applause. It just needs purpose. 1 year after the diner incident, Maria received an invitation to speak at a global conference on compassion and leadership. Heads of state would be there. Celebrities, CEOs. Maria didn't want to go. What could I possibly say to people like that, she asked Keanu. He smiled. Just say what you said to me, in the diner. So she did. She stood on a grand stage, lights blazing, cameras rolling, but her voice was soft. A year ago, she said, I asked a man to lower his voice, because I thought he was the one making noise. But really, I was the one who had been silent for too long. She paused. That moment taught me that the loudest words we speak are often the ones that come from quiet respect. The crowd didn't cheer wildly. They listened. Deeply. And after she stepped down, people didn't rush her for autographs. They approached her with stories of their own, and Maria knew. This wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. Back in the diner, years later, Maria sat alone again at the corner booth, her hair a little longer, her heart even stronger. She opened her notebook and began writing, not about fame, not about pain, but about people, the kind that go unseen, the kind that don't ask for credit. The kind that change lives quietly. Keanu arrived a few minutes later, 2 coffees in hand. You still write everything down? He asked. Always, she smiled. Some voices are too quiet to remember unless you write them. He sat down, passed her a cup and said, Funny, all this started because you asked me to be quiet. Maria looked at him, her eyes shining. And you listened. They sat together in silence, the kind that says everything,